Now you listen, and you listen good. We are a family. I know this because I pay the bills. So we are going to start spending time together. Lots of time.
Oh, lucky us.
We are going to start acting more like a family. Do I make myself clear?
Jawohl, mein Führer.
It's a theme song we all know and a story we're all familiar with. After one little fight and a scared mom, a young Will Smith is sent to live with his rich relatives in Bel-Air. But just how well off are his auntie and uncle? It's a question we've all thought about, and that's why today we're talking about just how rich Uncle Phil is. But before we get our lives flipped upside down, make sure you subscribe down below if you like this video and follow me on Twitter at 10kbill to yell at me about anything I may have missed. And because I'd get yelled at for not putting a spoiler warning in a video about a show that ended over 20 years ago, consider this your spoiler warning. Uncle Phil was born Philip Banks on January 30th, 1945. He was raised on a farm in North Carolina until he was 16 when he moved to Baltimore. The next several years he worked as a civil rights activist. He would continue on this way for the next 2 years until 1963 when he would receive several scholarship offers. He would ultimately attend Princeton and, eventually, Harvard Law. So he would graduate from Princeton in 1967 and he would be attending Harvard Law immediately following. He would likely work as a law clerk to both get experience and pay for his law school tuition, which would be much cheaper in the 60s than it is today. In 1968, Uncle Phil would marry Aunt Viv, who would likely be working on her doctorate at the time, and the following year, their first daughter, Hillary Banks, would be born. Uncle Phil would graduate from Harvard Law in 1970 and move across the country with his wife and daughter, where his wife would get a job as a professor at UCLA and Phil would get his first job as a lawyer. This is where we'll really start the numbers. And weirdly enough, this is actually the first time I had to take two people's salaries into consideration when doing one of these videos. So before we go any further ahead, let's talk about how we're going to do our math. We'll add together both of their salaries, take off the appropriate amount for taxes, subtract the equivalent of the average amount parents spend on a child each year, which is $13,000 in 2019, but we'll be adjusting for inflation. And finally, we'll have them put 20% of the remainder into their bank account, leaving the remaining 80% for living expenses and the various vehicles we see the Banks family driving throughout the series. We'll also be giving Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv cost of living adjustments each year. So now let's figure out just how much Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv are making. As a recently graduated lawyer, Uncle Phil would be starting as an associate at a law firm like Firth, Wynn & Meyer. Since a new hire associate can make an average of $79,709 in LA today, he'd be making $9,796.23 as a starting salary back when he starts. As for Aunt Viv, today a UCLA professor makes $169,024. That would bring her starting salary down to $21,921. So we go through all our math for the next several years until we arrive at 1974. This is the year that Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv have their second child, Carlton. This will double the amount of money they're spending on their kids per year, and as stated earlier, we are adjusting the amount spent for inflation. Now let's talk about 1975. This is the year that Uncle Phil becomes a board member of the NAACP. Today, the average board member makes $147,153 a year. Back in 1975, this would have been $25,236.73. So we'll be adding that onto a salary each year as we adjusted for inflation. So, coming out of 1975, Uncle Phil has $27,433.80. The next few years would pass by in the same fashion until 1979. This is the year that the third child, Ashley, is born, depending on a lot of things in the first season because continuity is hard. This would, again, increase the amount that Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv are spending on the children each year. And the birth of his third child, in my opinion, would prompt Uncle Phil to talk to his bosses and would lead to him getting promoted to partner at his law firm. Something that typically can take 7 to 10 years, with it taking 9 here. This would give Uncle Phil a massive pay increase and would increase the life quality of the entire family. Working under the assumption that he's a good lawyer, which is something we've seen in the series, Uncle Phil could be making upwards of $300,000 today in LA. Adjusting for the average salary in 1979, this would bring him down to $87,563.72, not including his still increasing NAACP board member salary. So, heading into the 80s, Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv would have $67,666.29 saved up. However, at this point, they'd likely be looking for a larger home to accommodate their growing family. So I believe 1980 is when they bought the Banks family home. Their home was a 5-bedroom, 5-bathroom home in Bel-Air. A similar home today can go for around $3.5 million. In 1980, their home would have been worth $906,000. Because Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv both have incredibly respectful jobs and positions in the community, they would be ideal candidates for a first-time homeowner's loan. Essentially, they could get away with putting much less down on a home than normal. If they were to put down $60,000 out of their savings account, that would be 6.62% of the total cost, which is well within the average amounts that a first-time homeowner needs to put down. The loan they would get would likely be a 30-year loan and will be taking the monthly payments out of the 80% the family isn't saving each month. Now we'll fast forward another 5 years to 1985. I think this is when the family would hire their butler, the aptly named Jeffrey Butler. This makes the most sense as to when they would actually hire Jeffrey because of an offhanded line that Jeffrey says, which is that he trained with Chuck Norris in the early 80s. This doesn't seem like something that a butler would have time to do, so it makes more sense for it to be something that was done before he was formally hired by the family. Considering that we hear through the series that Jeffrey is underpaid, we'll be starting him at a pretty low salary, just under the equivalent of $30,000 today, which will be adjusting for inflation throughout the series. We'll be taking off Jeffrey's salary in the same step that we'll be taking out the amount they're spending on the kids. So, coming out of 1985, Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv have $133,385.33. The next few years go by relatively uneventfully until one fateful day when, across the country, a young Will Smith gets into a fight. This leads his mother, fearing for her son's future, to send her son to live with Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv. So in 1990, we'll be adding yet another child's worth of expenses onto the amount that they're already paying for their children each year. Then we'll fast forward to 1992. This is a major year for the Banks family. On a more meta note, this is the season that the actress playing Aunt Viv changes. On top of just changing the actress, the character herself has some drastic changes. For one thing, she changes from a UCLA professor into more of a homemaker. We never see or hear of her going to work again, so we'll just assume that she quit her job in order to spend more time with the children, and because of her unexpected pregnancy. Which is a good time to mention that Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv are revealed to be having an unexpected child, Nikki, who was born the following year. Also in 1992, Uncle Phil decides to run for a position as a judge, ultimately losing to his old mentor, Carl Robertson. However, when Carl dies unexpectedly, Uncle Phil is named judge. Today, a judge in LA makes an average of $184,220, which would be $83,949.05 in 1992. So going forward, we'll be taking Uncle Phil's judge salary and his NAACP board salary. Aunt Viv no longer has a salary because you don't really ever see or hear of her going to work again. After 1992, Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv have $455,492.27. The next year, as we stated earlier, the Banks' final child, Nikki, is born. Though by this point, their oldest child, Hillary, is working and will no longer be counted into the amount they're spending on their children. However, with the birth of Nikki, there will be no change. Once again, the next few years go by relatively uneventfully until we reach the end of the series in 1996. During this time, the Banks family decides to move to New York. In doing so, they would sell their home. From the time they bought their home to when they decide to move to New York, 196 months pass. So by this point, they would still owe $527,289. Their home in 1996 would be worth $1,907,057. So we subtract how much they still owe from what they would likely get for their home and see that they would be making $1,379,768. After taking out the realtor share, they'd be left with $1,296,982.48. Any vehicles they buy would likely come with them, so we won't be taking those into account at all, mostly because the show's pretty inconsistent with what cars Uncle Phil has and doesn't have. And that's it. We really don't know what happens after they move to New York. They could retire, they could get new jobs, we just don't know because the show ends. So now for the moment of truth. As of 1996, Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv have $630,235.10 in their bank account, and after selling their home for $1,296,982.48, they have a grand total of $1,927,217.58, which is a solid amount fitting for the man who helped raise the Prince of Bel-Air. But anyways, this has been 10K Bill, and thanks for watching. We have some new stuff on the way in the form of a new series, specifically a D&D series called 10K Quest, that should be out in the near future. Make sure you comment down below what you'd like to hear me talk about next, and subscribe for all your entertainment related content.